From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest. This is Dale Carter's America.
And we're back at Podcast Central. I'm Dale. He's Kurt. Wearing my Chiefs gear today. And honestly, I put this aside last night and was going to wear it win or lose, right? Mm-hmm. It's either that the Chiefs are going to advance and play Baltimore, which they are, or what a great season we had. And to think about how spoiled we are in Kansas City. Think about this. Every year that Patrick Mahomes has been a starter, the Chiefs have been in the AFC Championship game. Every year. You know, there are teams that would kill for that kind of consistency. They've been in the Super Bowl 3 times. It might be 4. We'll see how it goes in Baltimore. But the Chiefs are in really good shape right now. I think they're playing really good football. They had some weakness there coming out of the bye week. But we're headed for the AFC Championship. I wish it were at Arrowhead. We had 5 in a row at Arrowhead, which had never been done. 3 in a row was the record. And you know who set that? Was Andy Reid, coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
And then we did it. It had never been done in the AFC. Then we did it in the AFC, and now we made it 5. So 5 is the record, and that's where it's going to stand for a while. So speaking of the Chiefs, first of all, you want to tell them, I skipped this last time, but I think it's important to say everywhere that you can get this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for all who are watching and listening and subscribed. That's the best thing that you can do is go to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn your notifications on. Make sure you like and comment. It really helps out the algorithm and helps us reach new people. So that's the main place for the video podcast would be YouTube and Rumble. And then we're also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your audio podcasts. And, of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well.
You know, when I got divorced the first time, way back in 1990, and this is a language warning, you know, because in the podcast world, we can say whatever we want. My lawyer was a guy named Emil Becker. I don't know if you know E.J. Becker or not. E.J. was at KMBZ for a long time, and he still does some special projects for them. He was my intern in Evansville when he was in high school, so I've known him for a very long time, and his dad was my lawyer. And I didn't want to take it to Emil when I got divorced because I was embarrassed about it, so we used the same lawyer. And Emil's response to me when I finally took it to him was, "Carter, you could fuck up a 2-car funeral." And that's kind of how I feel about the Jackson County legislature right now. They could fuck up a 2-car funeral. So they finally get the stadium issue on the ballot for April. And then Frank White vetoes it. Now, by the time this thing hits, they may have figured all this out because today, as we're recording it, is the deadline to get it on the ballot. And I just want Eastern Jackson County to vote no on it because it's a revenue deal. It's not so much about the stadiums. I want to starve them of every opportunity at revenue. And for everybody who wrings their hands and goes, "Oh, Dale, don't do this, because then the Chiefs and the Royals are going to move." They are not going to move. If anything, this might start a conversation as to why Jackson County has to take 100% ownership of it. Why do we have to pay the bill? Right? So, again, I just want us to vote no. Just vote no. Anytime you see a tax issue on the ballot, vote no. And next week we'll update you and let you know if it's going to be on the ballot. I love that. You just pulled up a Fox 4 report, and he just, shook his head. That says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're desperate. You know, they're desperate for any way that they can screw us over and take more of our money, but under any auspices that they can come up with. So it's kind of funny, you know, to see the reactions.
But you get my strategy here. If we say no enough, even the lunkheads in the Jackson County Courthouse in Kansas City are going to say, "Gosh, maybe we just ought to get rid of them people." You know, and have our own county, much like St. Louis did in 1876. And funny, we're going to talk about the 1870s quite a bit here in the first segment, talking about history and how history can repeat itself. But first, we want to thank a couple of our sponsors here. Of course, Bob Watson, our State Farm agent. He's been with me nearly 30 years through thick and thin, through 4 boys getting their driver's licenses. Bob Watson is a great guy if it's time to compare rates. In fact, I just got my homeowner's policy for the new year. And everything's going up, right? That's just the world that we live in. And my homeowner's policy for the whole year went up $99. I can handle that.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
You should get a rate quote, all right? Shop around. But what you're going to find is the guy who's going to take care of you, because it's great to get a really, really low rate, but then when you need it, it's like, who are you going to call? We're going to call Bob Watson.
Ghostbusters.
And his team. 7th and Main in Blue Springs, 816-229-7878. Auto, home, life, commercial insurance, licensed in both Kansas and Missouri. Bob Watson, my State Farm agent.
Bob, if you're listening, that's your free new spot idea. Who are you going to call? Bob Watson.
You know, he's got a pretty good marketing team there, and they've got Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid on the team.
That's true.
So I think they're in pretty good shape.
I don't think they
there.
need me. Yeah,
probably not. Who might need you is Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker. They are at Medicare Simplified KC.com. If you or someone you know or love is approaching 65 and about to get into that tangled web that we call Medicare, these are certified advisors providing Medicare education and enrollment assistance. Which part do you take? Which plan do you take? How do they work together? Where are the gaps? These are the folks who can help you steer and navigate those waters. And there's no out-of-pocket to you. And if you can't come to them, they'll come to you. It's a great service. They've helped thousands of your friends and neighbors who've been exactly where you are. If you know somebody who's approaching 65, or maybe it's you, call Medicare Simplified KC at 816-701-6661. They're on the web at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. They've got office space on Nolan Road, 3600 South Nolan Road, Suite F. But if you can't come to them, again, they will come to you, and they will make all of this simple, readable, and most importantly, usable. Like history. You know, for those of us who, you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And, I've really latched on to Bret Baier. I've read a lot of his books. He does like the 3-day series, like 3 days in this presidency and all that. And we talked a lot about the George Washington book that he wrote. Well, I also had it home from the library. I've been wearing out my library card lately. Bret Baier wrote To Rescue the Republic, Ulysses S. Grant. Now, this isn't so much about Civil War history or Lincoln history, or even Grant's presidency, per se. It's more about that time after Grant was the lame duck president. He decided not to seek a third term. He could have had a third term. And the election that happened after him, which was just a disaster. And that's really not what I want to talk about, but that's kind of what the book is about. When the left calls us racist, and they're going to, Kurt, that's all they've got. They've got fear and division, and racism is what they lead with. Stop cowering. And I know, and I was telling Jennifer this, that a lot of times in this podcast, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. You know, you buy into what we're talking about. I'm not sure we have a lot of hate listening anymore. The trolls that used to troll us, they really don't anymore. I think they've moved on.
Yeah, for the most part. There'll always be some haters, but that's just comes with it.
So for our tribe, those who believe in what we believe in, stop cowering in the corner. When they throw the charge of racism at you, ask for examples. How am I racist? You don't just say it. And doesn't that get tired and boring? We're going to get to that a little bit later on when we talk about Joy Reid. I mean, my God, don't you have another gear? Isn't there something else that you can say? Okay, so from the book, from Bret Baier's book, To Rescue the Republic, I want to talk first about Lincoln's reelection. Okay, Lincoln was elected in 1860. It spurred the Civil War. It had been simmering for a very long time, and then the Civil War happens. So by 1864, we're still at war. The war didn't end until 1865. And Abraham Lincoln needed a coalition government. Okay, Andrew Johnson had been appointed the military governor of the state of Tennessee. And, from all reports, was doing an okay job. He was a Democrat. Lincoln felt like he needed a coalition government to move forward, so he taps Andrew Johnson. Everybody knew Andrew Johnson was a drunk. He had that kind of going for him. And Lincoln thought, I'll put him in the vice presidency, and he can't do any harm. But maybe having him on the ticket will allow me to carry some states, and we can get to the reelection. Of course, Lincoln had no idea he would be assassinated and that Andrew Johnson would carry out most of his term. And I've always said this before. I think civil rights and relations between the races were set back by 100 years by the fact that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson, a Democrat from the South who was very racist, who wanted to get the South, the southern states, readmitted into the Union as quickly as possible. That's what set us back. And if you go to the Bret Baier book, and I'm going to start on page 165. This is the description of Andrew Johnson, the president who followed Abraham Lincoln after the assassination. The president of the United States has both a racist and a very difficult man to get along with, was both a racist and very difficult man to get along with. He routinely called blacks inferior. He bluntly stated that no matter how much progress they made, they must remain so. He openly called critics disloyal, even treasonous. He liberally threw insults like candy during public speeches. He rudely ignored answers he didn't like. He regularly put other people into positions they didn't want to be in and then blamed them when things went sour. That is the description of Andrew Johnson, the president who followed Abraham Lincoln. Unpopular. He was impeached. Did you know that?
Yeah.
He was the first president ever impeached. He was impeached because he tried to remove one of his cabinet secretaries during a recess period of Congress, and there was a law on the books that was ultimately deemed unconstitutional that said that you couldn't do that without consent of the Senate. And he did it anyway, and he was impeached, and he survived by one vote. After his defeat in the next election, he pardoned Southerners and readmitted the Southern states, even though they had not gone through Reconstruction. In fact, he completely scrapped Lincoln's Reconstruction plan. Under Grant, Democrats fought his Reconstruction efforts all 8 years. In fact, before we even get to that, when Grant ran for president in 1868, who was going to run against him? Who would run against Grant? And, you know, one of the things that the other side will argue against us, Kurt, is that, Democrats in the South became Republicans. They were Dixiecrats. So that's why you're racist, because of the Dixiecrats. So, of course, it was a Southern Democrat that would run against Ulysses Grant, right? Is that what you would think?
Yeah.
Well, the person who ran against Grant was New York Governor Horatio Seymour, a Northern liberal Democrat. And his campaign slogan, you ready for this? This is a Northern Democrat, not a Dixiecrat from the South. This is a white man's country, let white men rule. That was his slogan. Yeah. So let that kind of seep into your brain and all that as we talk about Reconstruction. Now, we know a lot about the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s, right? Mm-hmm. Passed by Lyndon Johnson with the help. A lot of people don't like to hear this. It's an inconvenient truth, but it was Republicans in the Senate who led the civil rights fight. Mm-hmm. And liberal Northern Democrats. In fact, there's a movie about Lyndon Johnson that came out as like one of those HBO movies. I can't even remember the lead in it. But there's a scene where he and Hubert Humphrey are in the White House, and Humphrey is very excited about civil rights legislation, and Johnson looks down his nose at him and says, "What are you so excited about? We've lost the South for the next 100 years."
Bryan Cranston?
Was it Cranston?
Is it All the Way TV movie 2016?
No, it was a guy who died. He had been in the Harry Potter movies.
You know
who I'm talking about?
Yeah, the guy from Die Hard.
No, I don't think that's right either. Okay, so anyway, we're off the track there. So civil rights legislation, you think of it as the 1960s. The Grant administration in 1875 passed the Civil Rights Act of 1875. That act said that all public institutions, railroads, hotels, restaurants, churches, and schools were to be available equally to blacks. Yep. Struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional.
Yep.
Because of Democrats. So there you go. That's the past. That's the history. And, of course, we take it to the 1960s and that coalition that we just talked about. Modern Democrats promote DEI. And we've talked about that, diversity, equity, inclusion. And if you're not on board with it, oh, my God. I mean, you're way out here, in the lunar fringes. because this is the way that we need to go. It's not about qualifications. It's not about, merit. It's about DEI. Now, if I were black, which I'm not, and I know that, and living in a city like Kansas City, I might ask a question. What have you done for me? Right? Republican Tim Scott, who I really like. And, one of the news headlines out there is that DeSantis got out of the race before the New Hampshire primary. So that just leaves Donald Trump and Nikki Haley at this point. And I think Haley's going to get out too. Wouldn't Tim Scott be a great running mate?
He's an option for sure.
I love that guy.
He's an option. I don't know where he's at on the list for Trump's people, but he's definitely an option.
Well, and DeSantis endorsed Trump. I mean, the Republicans are getting in line now. It's not going to be like 2016 where you had 18 Republicans and it was just a mess all the way. They're getting behind Trump now because they see the writing on the wall. Anyway, Tim Scott is a guy who I really love, and he did something. If I were black, I would think Tim Scott would be a guy I would love. He put in enterprise zones in black communities so that businesses could thrive. You've got these idiots that are running places like Kansas City that don't even think about the daily violence that we have, the black on black crime. You know why? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. Their narrative is white person kills black person. That's when I want the camera in front of me. Black on black happens every day. In fact,
and black on white too.
Well, the Pharaoh is in D.C. You know that, right? He's on Kamala's gun violence deal, and he's like wringing his hands about gun violence in Kansas City. Gun violence, Kansas City. Well, why don't you do something about it?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, there's too many guns on the streets. Always been a lot of guns in this country. What the problem is, and the missing link is, you're not putting criminals in jail. See KCK and the success that they're having by putting criminals in jail. And when we talk about DEI, of course, the poster child for DEI is our current vice president. So, what are Democrats doing to help black families stay together? I don't think they're doing anything.
No, they've done the opposite. They've incentivized single motherhood. They've incentivized poverty. They've incentivized having lots of kids out of wedlock. And now that has, grown into the culture where that's sort of expected, and it's become the norm over all these decades.
Yeah, it's true. Meanwhile, again, I go back to Tim Scott with enterprise zones and the work that he is doing to build up black businesses. The violence that happens in these cities too is just horrible. So that's freedom. A quick lesson from Bret Baier, talking about Ulysses Grant and the time that he lived in, which was 100 years before civil rights legislation finally made its way through Congress because Democrats kept it down. And when you say, oh, that's history, that's 100 years ago. Is Robert Byrd 100 years ago? He was in the KKK, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. And they look the other way. Joe Biden has a very inconvenient history in race relations, and they look the other way. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Freedom under Joe Biden. Let's talk about that for a second. Mandates on EVs with no workable plan, especially in cold weather. Did you see in Minneapolis, their electric bus fleet failed because of the cold weather?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then John Kerry, of course, he flies on his private jet over to Davos, where all the muckety-mucks are. I saw Al Gore was in the crowd there as well. And somebody questioned, number one, why are you going to Davos? And he said it's a stupid question. And then they start talking to him about EVs, and he says, it's all these things that we're saying about EVs, Kurt, that's just disinformation.
There has been a very, very clear policy, which regrettably has been attacked by people who are engaged in high levels of disinformation. They've been trying to scare people about the range of vehicles, so there's range anxiety out there. There has been a very, very...
Here's the question for John Kerry. Okay, let's say I buy this EV. How's it going to do when it's 15 below zero, like it's been in Kansas City this winter? Where can I charge it? I know there's some charging stations over at the Sunfresh just down the road from the radio station, and I do see cars there from time to time. In fact, Steve Serrano, who works for us, he has an EV, and he tried to charge it there and came out after his shift, and it didn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he was stuck here because it didn't work, okay? If I want to take a cross-country trip, and we've seen some evidence of people who've tried to do that, it's just crazy. The infrastructure's not there. That's not disinformation. That's true.
Yeah, it's obviously true.
Yeah.
With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey.
And of course, when you charge it, it's like, what do you mean I got to pay to charge it? I thought this was free. It's not free. Costs you about the same as it does for a tank of gas.
Electricity grows on trees.
The car costs a lot more. So, when you come across things like this and they label us as fascists, and again, it gets back to projection. What they're saying is what they're doing. I mean, who's the fascist here?
Yeah.
He talks about disinformation. They wanted to start a disinformation board.
Yeah. Yeah, there's obviously they're the people that are in control of determining what disinformation is. It wasn't disinformation when they discredited the Hunter Biden laptop. It wasn't disinformation when they told everyone that if you get the shot, you're not going to spread COVID and you're not going to get COVID. That doesn't count. But if you don't like EVs, that's disinformation.
The Nazis did that, and they call Republicans Nazis. It's crazy. Okay, back to Davos for a second. They had the opening ceremony, and they brought this person in. I'm not even sure who this person is, but the opening ceremony at Davos, speaking of COVID, is a coughing ceremony. This person goes from dignitary to dignitary and coughs on them.
Ang tua irmã chaya no Cambarro Anuri, no Camai, no Camwaka, na Anuri, no Yuyuá, na Warron Chinambo, Panque, Tu Chinam Chaval aqui, Chinamo Kikirani, Tsai Chavai Kirani, Tsai Makikirani. Awama Wananã, no Mahu no Wai, Wai Sharai.
Okay, now we go to the dignitaries, and I'm going to cough on your head. Wow.
Look at them lean into it, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm ready to get my loogie.
The last guy, these two are just like, look, he's like, oh, is it my turn?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, I have so many thoughts on that.
Oh no, please.
Well, there's so many different takes. Obviously, it's hilarious. First of all, like it just looks silly, and the coughing thing is very funny after everything that happened with COVID, and now they're talking about disease X or something like that. I haven't really been following it, but they're moving on to the next thing. They're trying to push the next global pandemic, but more than that, it's symbolic, right? It's a very interesting decision to have something like that at the World Economic Forum. It is a religious ceremony in a sense, instead of praying to God and using the Bible or praying to or even like in America we have the Pledge of Allegiance. There are certain rituals and symbolic things that you do that establish what is important to you, and this is a religious ceremony, but it's obviously a BS religious ceremony. It's some weird, pagan thing that she's doing. I don't really know. And that is not nothing. I think, the spiritual element of everything that's going on is really crucial. And I've been realizing that more and more myself. And it's just, it's kind of troubling and just interesting for sure that they would bring something like this into this kind of meeting. There's something weird going on there for sure.
Well, and again, why did they all have to fly there on their private jets to Davos? Couldn't they do a Zoom call?
Yeah, what's in Davos specifically? It's like a tiny little ski town in the middle of Switzerland.
You just said it. Skiing.
Yeah, but you can ski. You can ski anywhere. You can ski in Colorado. You can ski in, why go to Davos specifically?
You can ski down Signal Hill today, right by Channel 4.
That's true.
Yeah. So freedom. Freedom in the Joe Biden administration. Are you free to drive what you want, cook on what you want, heat your home and water the way you want? You are absolutely not. Because, if they had their way, they are going to mandate new car production 10 years down the road. They've all got to be EVs. Yeah. So you got to get on board. Thank God we're probably going to get another president by then who says, as a dictator on day one, he's going to repeal all of those executive orders that Joe Biden put into place. And he should. Okay, because you should be able to be free to drive what you want, cook on what you want, heat your home and water the way you want. By the way, the folks at the transportation department, you would think they'd be hard at work dealing with things like, I don't know, doors falling off jetliners at 30,000 feet. That kind of concerns me as a somewhat, seasoned flyer who flies quite a bit. No, they're not working on that. You know what they're working on? These signs, like we have scout signs in Kansas City that tell you information that you need to know. And some of these cities have been a little humorous in their language, and I think it's okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it gets your attention, Well, now the new rules coming from the Department of Transportation, there will be no more silly signs. You must be direct and simple. You just pulled up one that says, Santa sees you when you're speeding. Can't do that.
Don't drive Star-Spangled Hammered.
No, I think that's funny.
It is funny.
There's no humor with Democrats. You just can't be funny. You're racist. Racist. What's that one say?
Use your blinker.
Oh, that's an East Coast thing. Use your blinker there.
And then this one says, feeling stuffed, your seatbelt always fits.
Yeah. So no more of that. No more funny signs. That is the new guidance from the Department of Transportation.
Yeah, and I don't think we showed the door coming off the plane.
That concerns me, right?
Yeah. See if I can find that real quick. And then we did talk a little bit last week about the DEI initiatives that the airlines are taking. United being the most recent one, and then the FAA has had guidance on that as well. This was on Alaska Airlines. This is after it's landed, but you can see the...
Yeah, that's an oh shit moment for me, by the way. I am going to brown my pants if I'm sitting next to a door that flies
doubt,
off.
Man. I am crapping myself, without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not a priority, though.
No, not at all. It's the signs. We can't have any humor going on.
Yeah.
Humor will be outlawed. The new Disinformation Bureau will all the parallels to Nazi Germany are there, and then they have the balls to say, you're a Nazi.
Yeah, in 1984 too. I mean, everything is on its head. The truth is disinformation, and disinformation is the truth. Here's I did find a clip of the airplane door.
You found a clip of it? Where did it go?
Yeah, a piece of it strewn across the ground.
Oh my God, that would just I'd probably never fly again if something like that happened.
Yeah.
All right, we want to thank some more of our sponsors here who have been with us for a bit here. Clay Como Shooters. You can shop firearms. They've got range memberships, training, law enforcement. Herb and his guys, they'll take you through all the steps and get you trained properly. It's one thing to exercise your Second Amendment right, which you have the right, to have a pistol, rifle, shotgun. But you ought to know how to use it. I think that's the important thing. They've got ammo, accessories too. They invite you to come train with them. Call them up today and ask them about that. 816-452-4867. If you've already got a firearm, get some training with it. And if you haven't and you want to see what works best for you, Herb and his guys will take care of you. 69 Highway in Clay Como. They are on the web at claycomoshooters.com. claycomoshooters.com. Come train with them and make sure that if you ever need to use that Second Amendment approved firearm, you know what you're doing. When all this stuff melts, we're going to be left with our roof, and maybe you've gotten to the point where it's melting to the point where you've got to put like buckets here, buckets there because you got leaks. That is not a good thing. You need to get with my friends at Royal Roofing and Solar. Get them out there to inspect what you've got, maybe a repair job, maybe you need a whole new roof. They can take care of you. And find out a way that you can get that roof for free if you go solar. We make fun of a lot of what's going on here with the renewables and all that. I mean, I'm not a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal here. I understand that there are renewables out there that could make a difference, that could help you. And maybe going solar at your own house, not mandating it for an entire city, but maybe your house. Maybe it helps you with the rising cost of heating and cooling your home. Solarbyroyal.com. Find out everything you need to know about it. But if you need a roof, you need the folks at Royal Roofing and Solar. Austin Watterson and his family are in Cass County. They're a family-owned company. They put the roof on my house. I can tell you they did a fantastic job. RoyalContractingKC.com as well. You can find them on the phone at 816-540-7057. That's Royal Roofing and Solar. Okay, next segment I have here is the plan. The plan for the Democrats to hold on to power. It's called lie, cheat, and steal. Lie, cheat, and steal. And then when you call them on it, then they go, well, that's settled science. They just look at you like you've got 3 ears, man. It's like, what? That's, everybody knows that. Everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Feigned indignation is what I call it. And let me give you some examples so you know what's coming, what's already happened. Again, history. We don't want it to repeat itself. The whole Trump-Russia collusion thing. They sold that. Media ran with it. There was never any evidence. Zero, zilch, nada. No evidence whatsoever.
We got to lighten the mood a little bit. This is a great little song parody that I found on Twitter.
Love song parodies.
Russian collusion.
Trump-Russian sort of collusion.
Trump-Russian possible collusion.
Trump-Russian metal collusion.
Trump-Russia possible collusion.
Trump-Russian potentially collusion.
Trump-Russia possible collusion.
Trump-Russian possible collusion.
Trump-Russian bot collusion. Trump-Russian collusion. Trump-Russia possible collusion.
Russia hacked our election. Here comes a big change. Because all of a sudden, Trump, Russian possible collusion, collusion,
Trump-Russian possible collusion.
Trump-Russian possible collusion. Trump-Russians collusion.
Collusion with the Russians. Trump-Russia possible collusion. Trump-Russia possible collusion. Prove collusion. Prove collusion.
Was there collusion?
Absolutely.
Russia possible collusion. Trump-Russia 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 potential collusion.
Yeah. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but it just shows you like how pre-approved the narrative is. Like they're saying the same exact words with the same exact cadence,
right,
on the same networks. And it's just amazing. And the same thing applied with COVID. The same thing applied, there's that famous clip that went around a few years ago. I think it was from like Sinclair Broadcasting or something like that, who owns a bunch of local network affiliates.
Right.
And it's like a collage of them all saying the same exact thing. And they, bring them in one at a time. And it's crazy. But like, just it's amazing to me how controlled the narrative is, and like collusion, that word specifically, I would be willing to bet that half of these people had never said that word before in their entire lives before this whole thing happened. It's not a common word that you hear, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden collusion, was on everyone's lips and it was fake.
But here's my point. They're lying. They're all lying.
Yeah.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but you're...
Yeah. They're absolutely lying to you. There was never any evidence. There still to this day is zero evidence. They made it all up and ran with it. Okay, next example. Hunter's laptop. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Hunter's laptop. In fact, there's a fair number of people, Kurt, who are in the middle, right? The middle that we're all going after, who say that had they known about it, they would have voted the other way.
Yeah.
So the laptop was out there, okay, and then leading intelligence voices, I don't remember how many they got to sign this letter, but they all signed it and said it was Russian disinformation. That is an absolute lie.
Yeah, 100%. And that information too about the voting trends, that came out like right after. I mean, I think it was in exit polling after the election or right after the election. Now, polls, sample sizes, all that, take it with a grain of salt, but it was something like 11, 15, 17% of people that voted for Biden said they would not have if they had known about it. And that was more than enough to change the result of the election. But there's plenty of clips on this, but this is one from one of the debates where Biden is talking about it being fake and Russian disinformation.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
I still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation and a smear campaign, like you said.
Yes. I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign.
It's the last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. The vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all.
Yeah. So it did exist. It was not Russian disinformation. So again, this is under their plan: lie, cheat, and steal. Okay. The next part was COVID related. In certain swing states, they changed election laws, which you're not allowed to do outside of the legislative process. They did it judicially because of COVID, quote unquote. Okay. They didn't go through state legislatures. That was unconstitutional. We let them get away with that in swing states that all went to Joe Biden, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when we called them on it, they're like, well, it works so well. We need to codify it into law and make it every election. And we fought them like hell on that. And we're going to continue to fight them like that because, it ought to be easy to vote, but really hard to cheat. And they have made it really easy to cheat.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that it should be easy to vote either, but I mean, it's one of the most important, things that we can do as citizens. So it should be taken very seriously. But
I take it seriously. I'm just saying it ought to be easy. You ought to be able to register to vote, show your ID that you're eligible to vote, and then you go vote. I mean, to me, that's pretty damn easy.
Yeah. There was an interesting, just real quick. So this, there's a bunch of different people that posted this, but back a few months ago, Trump put out a full list of like all of the examples of election interference and fraud that he had found in all these different states. It's worth a save and worth going through on your own because the evidence is very compelling. But forget who it was. It might have been Vivek, actually, who also dropped out after Iowa. I don't know if we talked about that or not, but it was either him or somebody similar had a proposal where it was like, we'll give you reparations, or we'll give you, money, additional money, in the form of handouts or whatever in exchange for giving up your right to vote. And I think that's an interesting proposal. It's like, okay, you want all this free stuff, you want this, you want that. That's fine, but you can't vote. And I kind of think that's
the outrage there, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean that's what they want. They want the free stuff. So, but I do think maybe there's too many people voting. There's certain groups of people that probably shouldn't be voting, in my opinion.
Well, that's kind of like the historical context for how they did it last time: lie, cheat, and steal. We've got new stuff coming at us. Okay, the current effort to keep Trump off the ballot is now down to Colorado, but a lot of liberal states ready to pounce depending on the SCOTUS decision, and that is something that Supreme Court needs to get in on quickly, and that needs to be a 9-0 constitutional. I mean, it's kind of like they should send a note to Colorado. What are you people smoking there? We know what they're smoking. The interesting thing is it was a 4-3 decision in Colorado. They're all Democrats. And the 3 who dissented, including the Chief Justice in Colorado, wrote scathing dissents about their colleagues. It's like, there is no basis in the Constitution for what you were doing. Yet the unelected Secretary of State in Maine, well, she went that way too. Well, apparently that's on hold now, awaiting the SCOTUS decision. I know Oregon is waiting for the SCOTUS decision. Is this really where we want to go in this country? That if we don't like somebody, let's tar them with something and keep them off the ballot?
Yep. That's the way it's going. I mean, they're trying to keep him out of the White House by whatever means, any means necessary. So,
but you know what? He's the canary in the cave. We talk a lot about Trump and how he's been mistreated and mishandled and all this. This is their test case, Kurt. Mm-hmm. If they can get this with Trump, they could get it with DeSantis. They could get it with Nikki Haley. They could get it with Vivek. They could get it with anybody.
They could get it with you.
Definitely.
That's the thing. Like Trump's campaign, one of the strongest lines that he's ever had in his campaign is that they're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I'm like the spokesperson for you, basically. You know, that's not. He
If they
says
can
it
get-
much more eloquently
Yeah.
than I do, but it's so true. You know, if they can get him and throw him in prison for, you know, made up bullshit, they can certainly do it. I mean, they already have with some of the Jan 6 people and others, but it's a test case. If they can put him away, if they can, you know, eliminate him, their political opposition, then they can certainly do it to you. And that's the direction that it's going.
Did you ever see the movie Jurassic Park?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're like raptors. They're testing the fences.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's like, wow, okay, we got the guy tied up in court. We got him in 5 different jurisdictions on all this trumped up bullshit, and he's got to be in court. Okay, well, that's not good enough. Let's try and get him off the ballot in Colorado. Okay, Maine, you playing? Oregon, you going to play? I mean, they're just testing the waters on all this.
Right.
It's
Yep.
scary.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Okay. So we know all about the border agent story. Remember the lie that they told about the border agents beating migrants when it turned out they were using reins on their horses, all the way up to the big guy, Biden, who says this is just terrible. You know, we should never have anything like this, and punishment will be meted out, and yada, yada, yada. You know, you had, what's her name down in Texas, the big blabbermouth down there, Sheila Jackson Lee, that it was worse than slavery. This is worse than anything that happened in slavery.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out to be absolute bullshit. Do you think those agents got their payback or an apology or anything when it turned out to be bullshit?
I don't know.
I don't think they did.
Yeah.
I think if they had, it would have been a big story. So now the new lie is that Texas border agents interfered with the feds when 3 migrants coming across the river down there drowned. And they went with it. Karine Jean-Pierre went with it in the briefing room. And they're sticking by that story, and it's a lie. It's an absolute lie.
Yeah. This is from CBS News, in case you're just on audio. Texas physically barred Border Patrol agents from trying to rescue migrants who drowned, federal officials say. And that was also repeated, like you said, by Karine Jean-Pierre and others. This is the statement from the Texas Military Department. I'm going to read it real quick. The Texas Military Department is aware of a social media post concerning the drownings of 3 migrants. TMD was contacted by Border Patrol at approximately 9 p.m. in reference to a migrant distress situation. TMD had a unit in the vicinity of the boat ramp and actively searched the river with lights and night vision goggles. No migrants were observed. At approximately 9:45 p.m., TMD observed a group of Mexican authorities responding to an incident on the Mexico side of the riverbank, reported their observations back to Border Patrol, and they confirmed that the Mexican authorities required no additional assistance. At that time, TMD ceased search operations. At no time did TMD security personnel along the river observe any distressed migrants, nor did TMD turn back any illegal immigrants from the U.S. during that period. Also, at no point was TMD made aware of any bodies in the area of Shelby Park, nor made aware of any bodies being discovered on the U.S. side of the border regarding this situation.
Great story, though. And they ran with it. And, you know, Harold Ford Jr. is the sometime Democrat who's on the 5 on Fox News Channel, and I really like him. I think he's even-handed, and I think he's the kind of guy we could have on this podcast, and we could have a discussion. We might not agree on everything, but we could have a civil discussion. And when they asked him about this, he said, look, when you get information and it turns out you were wrong, you need to say you were wrong.
Yeah.
And they won't. They absolutely will not.
Or if they will, I mean, it'll be on page 30, you know,
Exactly.
or they'll make a correction to the original story, and then they'll put, you know, at the bottom in italics like they do, this story has been corrected to reflect XYZ, but they don't repost the story. They don't make any public, you know, scene of it. They just quietly revise it and move on.
Yep.
After the damage has already been done.
All right. Well, speaking of the border down there, and you know, you may say that I'm wearing a tinfoil hat or whatever, conspiracy theories, what have you, but let me just tell you what the long-term plan of the Democrat Party is. Why do you think that they are standing aside and letting millions of illegals come into Texas? What could possibly be their long-term goal on that?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's twofold. I mean, it's obviously voting is the number one thing. They
Down
want
the road,
more
sure.
people to vote for Democrats so that they have ingrained power for a longer period of time. If these illegals were voting Republican overwhelmingly, they'd have like machine gun nests on the border tomorrow.
They would. And this is why it pisses them off that Abbott is sending them to Chicago and New York. They don't need them in Chicago and New York.
Right.
Those are already blue, dark blue areas. They need them in Texas to try and turn Texas from red to reliably blue.
I think there is a second thing, though, which is a little bit more sinister, which is demographics. I mean, these people hate America. They hate white people. They want to see the traditional demographic makeup of America, being predominantly European, predominantly English speaking. Not, of course, that's the only people that could be here, but they want to dilute that to the point where English is no longer, the predominant language. You see more stuff in Spanish now, signs, commercials, things like that. I see it all the time, and they just want to dilute American culture to the point where we don't have a national identity anymore, and that's going to weaken us both domestically and on the global stage. That's part of it too, in my opinion.
Well, I think you might be right. We'll give you one more thing here on the section of lie, cheat, and steal. Our old buddy, James Carville. So there was a picture circulating around, you probably got it there, of Donald Trump with like sores on his hand. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Okay. And honestly, as he's holding his hand up, my first thought was he plays a lot of golf. And when I played golf, I would grip the club so that, I would get really sores in those same areas, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're gripping the club too hard. Now, Donald Trump's a much better golfer than I will ever be, but I have no idea what that is. And Carville knows, though. He says he's got the clap.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the clip. Was it a clip or just a...
Of Carville?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen a clip of that. James Carville basically says he's seen this before, and what he's got there is he's got a venereal disease. He's got the clap.
Oh.
And, really? Really?
Yeah, it's weird that you would immediately go there.
Is James Carville a doctor now? I mean, I don't know. I need to talk to Dr. Mark over there and find out if hand sores are a sign of the clap. Because let me just show you here am I on camera here?
Yes.
I don't know if you can zoom in on this or not, but I've got like this big sore right here, okay, on my forearm. And I got like a trail of them that go down my hand, all right? And you know how I got those?
Shooting up.
I don't have the clap. And I'm
shooting drugs.
No, this is my dog. My dog. We're wrestling around a little bit, and he got a hold of me. I have no idea why Trump has those sores on his hand.
I did find the video. So.
All right, play it.
And I've asked a number of MDs what medical condition manifests itself through hand sores, and the answer is immediate and unanimous: secondary syphilis. And
he got the clap. He went on to call it the clap.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is what they do. This is what they do. They lie, they cheat, and they steal. I mean, I've tried to be nice about this. I've tried to keep this on a policy level, but I'm tired of it. I'm pushing back. DeSantis got out. He's behind Trump. Vivek got out. He's behind Trump. Nikki Haley is going to be the next domino that's going to fall. She's the only one that's still in the race. New Hampshire's going to happen, then South Carolina, then Super Tuesday, where she can't play because, let's face it, the things that she's saying are kind of like, light. It's not really conservative.
You're talking about Nikki Haley?
Yeah.
Yeah, she is a disgrace, in my opinion. I mean, she's not a conservative. She's not to be taken seriously. She just went on MSNBC the other day, and let me see if I can find this. She talked about getting picked on every day for being a brown kid in the South. Like, she sounds like a liberal whining about race, and it's just like, it's so pathetic. And it's also not true. Let's be honest. I mean, she was not picked on every day for being a brown kid in the South.
Well, that's
Give me a freaking break.
And we're going to get to Joy Reid here in a second. You have the clip?
I have a clip of Nikki Haley.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were the only Indian family in our small southern town. I was teased every day for being brown. So anyone that wants to question it can go back and look at what I've said on how hard it was to grow up in the deep South as a brown girl.
Yeah. Well, you know
Anybody
what?
can look at my record and see when Walter Scott was shot down by a dirty cop, how I made sure that the Walter Scott family didn't suffer because we put the first body camera bill in the country in place. Anybody can look at the fact that when we had 9 amazing souls die in Mother Emanuel Church, I did something that no Republican or Democrat ever wanted to touch. which was call for the Confederate flag to come down because it would take 2/3 of the House and Senate and was an impossible feat. I don't know what you're implying with that, but what I will tell you is saying that I had black friends is a source of pride. Saying that I had white friends is a source of pride. If you want to know what it was like growing up, I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black, because they didn't know where to put me. So look, I know the hardships, the pain that come with racism. It's the reason that I fight bullies every day when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, or hate, and I always will.
It's so pathetic. I'm sorry. It's just like you talked earlier about not, buying the bait of getting called a racist. And that is just a perfect example. I mean, she is perfectly playing into the entire premise of this leftist narrative on all of these things. She's sitting there with these two MSNBC ladies trying to, pander to them like, oh, vote for me. I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the good ones. Vote for me. They're not going to vote for you.
No.
They don't give a shit about you. They think you're a racist anyway.
Right.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
It's like, God. It pisses me off to no end.
I was just listening to her talk about her grade school, though. When I was in grade school, I was the fat kid. Okay, Dale rhymes with whale. And my nickname in grade school... I'm
not going to let you live that one down. Thanks for letting me know.
My nickname in grade school was Dale the Whale. And
I thought you were going to say Whale Carter.
No, Dale the Whale. And, because I was a fat kid. And you think I wasn't discriminated against? Here's the difference between liberals and conservatives. Conservatives deal with the bullshit in their past. They pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they get something done.
Yeah.
They don't sit around and wallow in it and call you a racist or you this or you that. Yeah. They get out there and they get something done.
Yeah, Nikki, you're a multimillionaire. You are the ambassador to the UN. You're running for president of the freaking United States. You are governor of South Carolina. Give me a break.
Yeah. Okay, well,
God.
The uphill fight ahead is everything that we just talked about. But I want to focus on the media. Did you see, you probably did, that MSNBC refuses to carry the leading candidate of the Republican Party, the person who got half the votes of the people in this country? They refuse to carry him live, and they are proud of it.
I just have to do a little bit of business just for a second. At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving...
Justin Bieber's looking a little bit older these days, don't you think?
I didn't see the clip. Where was that?
I said Justin Bieber's looking a little bit older these days, don't you think?
You're saying Rachel looks like...
The projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision.
Shameful.
But there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things.
Well, what about Joe Biden and every time he goes in front of the microphones? Because he is lying his ass off if he can remember to put a sentence together.
Well, the good news is they're not watching Trump, but nobody's watching them. So it all works out in the end.
It just bothers me. And every time I see a clip on Joy Reid, okay, Joy Reid, and didn't she used to work for NBC? I thought she was like a legitimate reporter at some point. Yet now, every time she is on TV, it's about somebody being racist. Everybody in this world is racist except Joy Reid. I've come to that conclusion.
Yeah, she's perfect. She's a perfect angel.
New Hampshire. And I think to the point that you made, Steph, I mean, it's the elephant in the room. She's still a brown lady that's got to try to win.
Can I just pause this for a second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
She's talking about Nikki Haley.
Can we talk about her hair? What the hell is going on?
It's racist. It's racist.
Well, first of all, I mean, she is the first person that will talk about cultural appropriation. Anything that is remotely attached to black people or blackness, if you have dreads, if you listen to rap music, it's cultural appropriation. Meanwhile, she has this half-assed wig. You can still see her hair underneath the wig when she turns her head. I watched this clip.
Yeah.
That's white hair. She's doing white hair.
And by the way,
she's culturally appropriating, and it looks terrible. You look stupid.
She also started the clip by saying, well, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. Now, that takes me back to being called Dale the Whale at Holy Spirit Grade School.
That's very true.
And I'm having a moment. I may need to be held.
Triggered. All right, let's keep watching.
In a party that is deeply anti-immigrant and which accepts the notion that you can say immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country.
No, we're not. Stop the tape. All we're saying is, get here legally. We cannot have millions of people coming across our border unchecked, and that's what we have right now. Does that make me a racist?
Apparently.
Birthered by Donald Trump. And I don't care how much the donor class likes her, which will ramp up a lot, the better she does in New Hampshire. So it's still a challenge. I don't see how she becomes the nominee of that party with Donald Trump still around. I can't picture it happening. Maybe it could happen. Ron DeSantis' only argument for staying in it is he's the white guy, that he can still make the appeal to white.
So, and it's interesting too, because like she is that's a bad screen clip there.
Bad place to stop that.
She is, advocating for Nikki Haley, not because she likes Nikki Haley. She's not doing it because she is pro Nikki Haley and wants Nikki Haley to be president. She's doing it purely anti-Trump, purely anti-white, racist. Oh, they're all racist, backwards bigots. It's not because she actually cares about Nikki Haley. If Nikki Haley were to become president and get the nomination and get elected, then she'd turn around and start calling her a racist. She has no horse in this race. She doesn't give a shit about Nikki Haley. It's just about demonizing, the other side by any means necessary. And Nikki Haley is the thing that she can grasp onto because she's brown.
She's brown. I bet Nikki Haley's got her own natural hair too, but that's another story.
That's probably true. Yeah.
If they can't keep Trump off the ballot, here's the plan. They're going to use fear and charges of racism to keep their Democrat voters in line, because none of you who believe like we do are buying into this bullshit. They're talking to their people, right? We're talking to our people. They're talking to their people, okay? They're going to keep them in line. I mean, Joe Biden says it clearly, right? If you can't figure out whether you're for me or for Trump, you ain't black.
Yep.
That's verbatim from Joe Biden, okay? So what I want us to do is focus on the question, the Ronald Reagan question, all right? Are you better off under Biden than you were under Trump? Is America better off than it was 4 years ago because of Biden policies? They can't talk about their policies. Their policies are a train wreck, an absolute train wreck on every front. We can demonstrate that. So all they have is fear and division, and that's what they're going to trade in, fear and division.
Yep.
Scary.
And it works too. I mean, unfortunately, it's easier to convince people of something negative than something positive. It's harder to actually make a positive case for change and for something different. So, and especially when you have nothing to run on, I mean, you just got to call the other guy racist. That's the entire strategy.
So when they call you a racist, I want you to stop for a second, take a deep breath and say, prove it.
Yeah.
2 words, prove it.
Or just say, okay, and then move on. Who cares?
I want him to prove it. I want him to show me where I am, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't buy into all that, and we should just keep talking about the stuff that we're talking about. One thing that I'm going to keep talking about, I'm going to keep preaching on, is you've got to get your colonoscopy. It's very important. Could save your life. If you're 45 or older and you have not had a colonoscopy, please, today, call my friend Dr. Mark Taramina at Midwest GI Health and Wellness. You can reach him at 816-836-2200. 816-836-2200. They're on the web at MidwestGIHealth.com. This could save your life. Think about it. If they get some polyps and it's the early stages of colon cancer, they can fix that. They can fight that. You can win that battle. But if you let it fester and you don't do anything about it, we're seeing so many more stories, about younger people now who have colon cancer. They haven't had their colonoscopy and they're dying of colon cancer. It will kill you. But if you treat it and you catch it early, they can fix it. That's why colon cancer screening is so vital to you, and these folks will take care of you. They can do the upper and the lower. Just reach out to them at MidwestGIHealth.com. They're in Lee's Summit. Everything that you need for the colonoscopy is going to be there. It's one stop, and they'll take care of you. Dr. Mark Taramina, 816-836-2200, online at MidwestGIHealth.com. And after you've done that and you've done the prep, you're all cleaned out, pizza is the perfect way to celebrate. And Funhouse Pizza is the best pizza in town. In fact, we had like World Pizza Day or something like that last week. Oh yeah. And the best pizza that you're going to find in this town, I guarantee it, is Funhouse Pizza. Jim Dingman, they pile it high with whatever toppings you want. We can argue about what the best toppings are. I don't like pineapple on pizza. I really don't like anything that smacks of vegetables on pizza. So I don't want any olives or peppers or onions. Definitely no mushrooms. Are you a mushroom guy?
No.
I'm a meat guy, right? You pile it with meat and cheese and all that. And you know, when I was growing up, my parents loved mushrooms on pizza. And they would say, well, we'll get it on our half and you boys can have it without. Do you know what always happens?
It tastes like mushrooms?
No, every single time some mushrooms make it to the other side.
Oh, yeah.
They don't know where the border is.
Yeah.
And so you end up picking off shit. And you talk about the taste, you get onions or peppers on there, and it'll taste like onions or peppers.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, especially with pepperoni is the worst. I mean, I like pepperoni, but some people don't. You know, if you get a half pepperoni pizza, you just have a pepperoni pizza. I mean, the juice from the pepperoni goes to the other side, obviously, you know, so.
Funhouse is a great place to gather with your family, your friends, your team, whatever the case may be. They'll take care of you in the party atmosphere, too. 50 Highway, Lee Summit, 7 Highway in Blue Springs. One final shout out to our good friend, Bob Watson, State Farm agent for 5 decades. If you haven't had your rates checked in a while, they have surprisingly great rates at State Farm, and it's even cheaper when you bundle your auto, your home, your life insurance, your commercial insurance. When you bundle it, you save even more. You've heard Patrick Mahomes say that, so you should believe it. And then look for the best agent you can find in town, and that's my buddy Bob Watson. 816-229-7878, 7th and Main in Blue Springs, but he's not limited by that. He's licensed in both Kansas and Missouri, and he is ready to help you. State Farm, like a good neighbor, like Bob Watson, State Farm is there. I want to leave you with this, because, you know, I've been reading this book, and I'm almost done with it, which is good because it's due back at the library on Wednesday. Bret Baier's To Rescue the Republic, Ulysses S. Grant, and the election after he was president and how he stepped in and helped save the country. He wrote that, he was putting the finishing touches on it at the time of January 6th. So it's an interesting, there are some interesting parallels in there as well. So if you haven't read that book, check it out at your library. MCPL is my library, and I wear out my library card. Okay, so as the hand-wringing continues over Israel defending itself after the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th, I'm going to leave you with a quote from that Bret Baier book on Grant. This from Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman. He was criticized for his scorched earth policy in Georgia. If you don't know your history, William Sherman, Wild Bill, as he was called, basically went on a route across Georgia, and he burned the place to the ground.
Ended the war, pretty much.
It ended the war. He burned down Atlanta. Okay, so, and he got some criticism from it, you know, from the likes of the Bernie Sanders of the time, who are telling Israel right now, you should be nicer in this war. You should, you know, limit civilian casualties and all that. Let's remind you that Israel was attacked by terrorists on October 7th, and 2,000 people were killed who were out, you know, basically playing soccer and hanging with their family, maybe having a coffee or whatever, and they were killed by terrorists, and those terrorists fester in Gaza. So William Tecumseh Sherman's quote in the Civil War when they told him to be nicer about war, okay? He said, quote, "If the people raise a howl against my barbarity and cruelty, I will answer that war is war and not popularity seeking. If they want peace, they and their relations must stop war." You know, that might work in the Middle East too. If you don't want Israel blowing up your towns and in your schools and all this other stuff, the things that they're going to have to do to root out the terrorists that you allow to live there, maybe you and your relations ought to step in and stop the war. That's my thought on it. Until next week, we'll have the results of the New Hampshire primary and perhaps Nikki Haley getting out of the race and everybody getting on the Trump train. I'm on the Trump train. It's time to take this country back. And until next week, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.